folks, another Tuesday, another great time. Creative Finance with JB. This week's going to be a good topic as always, but we're gonna talk a little bit about the housing and our homeless as we have before. We see so many things happening in our government, but we're just gonna stay focused on seeing what we can do out here, how we can change it. We got to change the mindset of folks out here of understanding that everybody's just human. Everybody's human. Everybody's a person. Everybody just deserves the basic forms of living, and we're gonna kind of work through that because I know y'all hear so much out here in the news here of what's going on. You know, we were just talking about SNAP benefits. We talking about people not being able to pay their mortgage, their rent. We see so much stuff on the news where they're stopping evictions, but we need to talk about what are we going to do out here, how we're going to make it better. Let's have some resolution to some of the things that's going on out here in our country, because we're in a desperate and a time right now that where we got to think optimistically, regardless who you are. For it is, I have one of my favorites, Sonia Starr, on here today. We're going to talk about some of the stuff they have going on in their in their department, in their sector, and kind of figure out what's going on. So, Sonia, if you could just pass on what's going on out there with Housing Alliance of Delaware right now.
Well, first place, thank you for having me on again. Always appreciate the opportunity to share. We are working hard to do community education right now to get ready for the session, which starts in January, right? The Delaware session goes from January to June, so it starts in January. And right now, we know there are going to be some bills that we're really watching and trying to pay attention to that start in January. So we're trying to get out there in the community and let people know what's at stake. And when I think about what's the most exciting thing is that here in Delaware, we actually can make change. We actually can do something if we choose to get involved. And so that's the message that we keep putting out. So we have two programs coming up, one in November and one in December. One is Faith and Housing Justice Week.
Oh.
That's when faith communities across the state from November 18th to November 25th are doing something about housing instability, sermons, lectures, Zooms, all kinds of stuff. So people should check our website. I think the link will probably come down on the bottom soon and look it up. We would really love to have people participate. Every event is open to the public. So that's coming up November 18th to the 25th. And then December, we have the Homeless Persons Memorial Service. It's always on the shortest day of the year, which means it's always on December 21st in dark, regardless of rain or shine, because people are living on the streets no matter what. And so in Wilmington, it's going to be at 5 p.m. at the Episcopal Church of Saints Andrews and Matthews on Shipley Street. And we're, again, invite everybody to come. It's an opportunity for us to acknowledge that the number of people living on the street means there's a significant rise in number of people who are also dying on the streets.
Wow. And that's amazing for those programs. But like you said, we have some folks out here dying on the streets and still homelessness, and we still increasing folks out here. This not getting no better, especially with our current situation and our government shutdown. I just heard some news today that it's even affecting some local stores and stuff where they're faced with using some of those employees that work for the federal government that's not able to come around for it and stuff. And that's amazing. So can you tell us about that November? Is it you said a 4th or 14th event?
November 18th through the 25th. It's a lot of different programs depending where you are. So for example, November 18th, we're going to have a kickoff at night where I'm going to be doing some teaching about Jewish text and how Judaism understands homelessness and being housed.
Mm.
But then the next night in Newark, in person or virtually, they're going to have a program where Rachel Stucker, the executive director of Housing Alliance Delaware, and Cheyenne Miller, who works with the
Mhm.
Homes Campaign, are going to be talking about housing opportunities to solve the problem in homeless all across the city of Delaware, and also at the UU Church in Sussex. There's going to be programs Friday night. Saturday, there's a program on land use reform in Wilmington. On Sunday, there's a program in both Newark and another program in Wilmington. So there's just programs all over the state, all
Mhm.
about housing instability. Some of them more sermons, some of them more educational, some of them more artistic and creative. So people should just check it out.
Wow. And how did y'all come up with this housing justice week? Where did that derive from? Was it just from the homelessness or what happened?
Well, it came from a couple different places. You know that I'm an ordained rabbi, and in
Mhm.
my previous job, I was a congregational rabbi for 27 years.
Wow.
And it is not uncommon in the congregational world to have weekends that are dedicated to something. We used
Mhm.
to do Human Rights Weekend. Children's Defense Fund for years in the beginning of my career had a weekend dedicated to fighting children's poverty. So there's these weekends that you connect to. So when I came to Housing Alliance and we were talking about we need to do community education, it just came to mind that, well, this is a tool that faith communities know about. Let's give them some publicity and let's organize them. And the truth is, in Delaware, faith communities are often at the frontier of benevolent gifts. They do Code Purple,
Mm.
that's sheltering people when it's cold in the winter. They collect food, they have pantries, they put people up in hotels and motels for a couple of nights. They do collections, all kinds of stuff, but they don't always do advocacy. And so for
Mhm.
me, the goal of Faith and Housing Justice Week is to get the faith community that's doing this really important benevolent work to
Mhm.
also transition to doing advocacy, so we don't have as much of a need for all the benevolent work as we do right now.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing to have that go on for that. And can people donate or how can they help with this? Because I know it's a whole week that y'all have planned here, and we're gonna have some folks out there. Um, you know, are y'all looking for volunteers or anything like that?
To be honest, we're looking for participants. That's
Okay.
what we're looking for. We're looking for people to pick something they like, that looks interesting, that looks like they can get something out of it and learn, and go to it. Because what I'll do is then everybody will tell me how many people came. And when I go in January to Dover, I'm going to say X number of people from Y number of congregations across the state of Delaware. We're talking and studying and praying about housing instability. You have got to do something about it.
Wow, that's amazing. For that, that's good to go. And next question is, has legislative procedures helped our homeless population, or, I mean, are we getting some support from our legislators, or where are we at with that?
So it's not a simple yes or no
Yeah.
question answer. There's some things that are going that it has hope, and there are other things that are happening that are scary. So on the positive side, the governor convened a collaborative federal agencies plus my executive director on Housing Alliance Delaware as a nonprofit to meet together to talk about what each department individually is doing about the
Mhm.
homelessness crisis, to learn from each other's successes and mistakes, and then to see where they can work cooperatively. They're not done. They've just begun that process, but we need to break down the silos in Delaware. And so that's a good step. That's a good beginning. So in that hand, that's really good. On the scary hand, though, in both Wilmington and in Georgetown, we're seeing some really anti-homelessness propaganda,
Mm.
falsehoods being shared on social media, some potential legislation coming down locally that could be really hurtful to people experiencing homelessness. In Georgetown, they created a Facebook page that is Make Georgetown Great Again or something like that. And all I have not been on it. So this is, your guests should, your viewers should go and double check me. But what I've been told is it's all about how people experiencing homelessness are destroying Georgetown. It's just every horrible stereotype you can have about people experiencing homelessness. And then in Wilmington, they just finished Wilmington just finished their task force on homelessness. And they had some recommendations, some of which were good, but not enough. And so a whole coalition of us went together and we put out our own recommendations of more expanding on what they did to say what we think should be done. And now we're waiting to see what they actually do.
Wow. And stuff. That's good to see that we even have the governor's ear, on this issue, because homelessness is for real, for it. And Sonia, if you can just break it down for people, when we talk about homelessness, it's not just people on the street, so folks will understand. We're not just talking about people walking around with a shopping cart and a bag and stuff like that. But if you can break that down for them to explain the thought of homelessness and what that really means.
I'd be glad to. So one of the things that we forget is that the smallest percentage of people that are homeless that are the ones we see on the streets. That it is a significantly larger percent of people who are homeless who we don't ever see. They might be in a shelter. They might be hiding in their car somewhere where we can't find their car, right? They might be tripling up. We heard of, this was a year and a half ago, down south in a mobile home. They had a 1-bedroom mobile home with 30 people living in 1 bedroom, sharing 1 bathroom. 30 people. And in that place, they rent, because a lot of in the mobile homes, not all, but some of the mobile homes in the South are poultry workers in the poultry industry. Poultry industry is a 24/7 industry. It's always open and always running. So we've heard that people down south rent beds, not an apartment, which means 3 people in a 24-hour period rent that bed. That means if I get sick, if I have a day off, I don't have a bed to lie down in because it's somebody else's turn to be in my bed.
Wow.
I mean, so there's a lot of hidden things that we just don't know about. At some of the college campuses, we know that there are homeless students. They've been accepted into the program, but there's not enough student housing for them and they can't afford to live in apartments, normal apartments. So they sleep in the couch in the lounges. They sleep on the floor of their friend in the dorms. They're hidden. Like there's all kinds of hidden homelessness that we just can't even count or track because people are doing the best to get by.
Right. And I heard at the IMA in Dover, they were talking about that where some of the students, they don't have families to go home like for the holidays and stuff, and looking for somebody to kind of help with assist them with a meal and stuff like that, which is I thought it was awesome. They said that they really don't want to be able to go to somebody's house because they know it's not really that family, but if they can just eat and just go back to their rooms and stay and stuff. So I recommended that I was going to announce that if we have any folks that preparing meals or something like that, that we would consider, and I would provide them with the contact for that so they can provide meals and stuff for it and everything. But yeah, the homelessness, and eating and being able to have some stability, it's a key model right now for it. And folks, I want to tell y'all out here that if y'all feel that somebody homeless shouldn't be feeling upset and depressed. You have another thing coming, they're not going to have the best attitude, because I know I wouldn't, you know,
Mm-hmm.
out here with nowhere to go or something to do. But, and we know some people, we might think that they taking advantage and everything, but we can't look at that. They're humans out here. They're
Right.
trying to survive. And
Even if somebody has housing and food,
mhm,
in society at this time of year between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, all we do is talk about family, being with your family, being with your family. What if you don't have a family,
right.
right? What if you're a child who aged out of foster care? You didn't do anything wrong, right? You were
Mhm,
placed in the foster care system. You were never adopted. You're 18 and out. Where are you supposed to where are you supposed to
right.
get a family from, right? the
Right.
this i this idea that everybody has a family nearby, or that can travel and get to them. And this year, with the crisis in the airports,
Mhm,
traveling is not so easy. People are going to be more and more isolated. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is that how rare it is that we know who lives on our street anymore, or how
mhm,
rare it is we know who is hurting around the corner, right? I grew up and I didn't have to tell my mom which house I was at. She knew there were three houses with children. I was at one of the three, and they were keeping me safe, right?
right,
So
right.
she could find me if she needed to. But nowadays, it's not like that, that you automatically have a place where you know what's going on in the neighborhood. And if we don't look out for each other in our neighborhoods, in our
Mhm,
communities, how do we expect people to have places to go to feel good about themselves so they can thrive?
right. And somebody asked the question, is it possible to talk to our senators or our representatives about this homelessness, and or do we have to wait for a certain platform to do that?
No, 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 no. You do not need to wait. Absolutely not. It is absolutely a great time to reach out to your senator or your House of Representative and invite them out for tea or coffee. Go
Mhm,
meet them at the local brouhaha or whatever's in your neighborhood.
mhm,
Um, Make sure that they know that you are watching how they vote. And we because this is going to be the second year of a 2-year session,
mhm,
we already know there are two bills that are going to be voted on.
mhm,
Let them know that you're watching. One of them is HB 135. HB 135, the DeVore Gilbert White Homeless Bill of Rights, is really, really important. This
mhm,
bill would make it so that you cannot move somebody off the street only if they're in public space. We're not talking about loitering on private property. We're talking about if they're on a bench in a park. We're talking about if they're on public space, if
mhm,
they're not breaking any laws, and there's nowhere else for them to go. There's no beds in a shelter. There's nowhere for them to go. You cannot find them, arrest them, or move them from corner to corner. We have got to get this bill passed in Delaware. And now is a great time to reach out to your senator and congressperson and let them know you're watching this bill. So that's one. And then the second bill we already know about is called Pay to Stay. And that's to prevent people from becoming homeless, right? There's how do you help the people who are homeless, but also preventing people from becoming homeless. And we
mhm.
all know that the rents are sky high right now. They're
Right,
way
right.
too high, and people could barely afford them who do have housing. So what we're finding is people are needing two paychecks to pay rent, right? Like
Mm,
one doesn't quite cut it. And so they might be 6, 7 days late with half the rent. I literally know somebody who was 7 days late with half the rent. She paid up in full, she paid the fine, everything, and she was still evicted. If
wow.
somebody's paid in full, they paid all your legal fees, they paid all your fines, you should be allowed to stay, and the landlord has all their money and the tenant has a place to stay. And so yes, talk to your legislators now. It's really, really important.
For it and so somebody asked the question, what are the most effective ways to help someone experience homelessness? What do we tell them? Do we kind of let them know it's some place for them to go, or is something out there?
So one of the simplest things to do is to
Mm-hmm,
make eye contact and
mm-hmm,
smile and say good morning, good
mm-hmm,
afternoon, how you doing? They might ask you for money. You could say not today, or you can give them some. That's your choice.
mm-hmm,
But people who living on the streets, sometimes I feel like they're invisible, like they aren't seen, like they're not worthy of being interacted with. That's a real simple thing. Some people give people who are experiencing homelessness food. Some people give them gift cards to Wawa's or a local grocery store where they can get to so they can get food. That would be a nice thing to do. But the truth is, unless you're a trained professional who has an apartment, or, you're not going to be able to solve their problems that way. The best thing you could do is do the work we do legislatively to prevent homelessness. Although volunteering Code Purples across the state need people to volunteer, that's another way you could volunteer at a Code
mm-hmm,
Purple. And that's a good way to meet people in safe space and talk to them about the experiences and really start to understand who is homeless and what it means. So that's
mm-hmm.
something else people could do.
Wow. And we're just gonna have Miss Star's email go across the screen as we really focus on, contact her and her. If y'all have some ideas, if y'all see something happening that we can kind of provide some resolution to, send her an email, at Sonia Star at Housing Alliance Delaware, housingalliancede.org, and pass this out, because some folks don't know what to do when they get homeless. They have no
That's right.
clue of where it's going to be at. How do I get up there? How do I find some place to go for a couple of days so I can get out the cold and stuff? And it's getting cold out here for it,
Mhm.
and everything. So folks will have some type of outlet for it. And sharing is caring. As I say, share that
Mhm.
information for let them know about what's happening out here to see if we can have. And
You know what?
be
I just
generous.
thought of something else people can do if that's okay.
Hmm.
If you're a landlord, if you have any viewers who are landlord who have an empty apartment and are looking, consider taking somebody who's working at minimum wage and not maybe can't pay your full market rent, or it has a voucher,
Hmm.
and a housing choice voucher where the government subsidizes the rent. Because truly that is another way to prevent homelessness, is for landlords to step it up and say, I need to make enough to survive. I get that, absolutely get, they have to cover mortgage and expenses,
Hmm.
but maybe they don't have to make as much as its fair market rent is. And there's a whole lot of people who are working full-time who can't afford apartments right now.
Right, right. And that's a great idea. If you have it. Somebody else asked a question, saying, what are the difference between various housing models like supportive and affordable housing? What are the differences between the housing models like supportive housing and affordable housing?
That's a great question. We talk about there's a continuum of housing, which
Hmm.
means there's a lot of different kinds of housing for
Hmm.
different people with different needs. So obviously for somebody who is on the streets, they need an emergency shelter. They just need a safe place to go for the night, right? Just
Hmm.
let me sleep, right? To get as best as they can. But if you've been on the streets for a long time, it's almost impossible to go from being on the streets to totally being independent. So the next thing would be either what's called transitional housing or permanent supportive housing, which is housing that has wraparounds that come to you. So you might have one day a nurse come and say, hey, I heard that you have an open wound, Sonia. Can I come in and check it? Or might have a common room where an AA meeting is going. So all you have to do is walk out your door, right? Or somebody might come and say, hey, a nurse might come and say, hey, how are your meds doing? Do you need to refill it, right? you're not ready to go out and find the supports that you need yet. You've had too much trauma, too much disability out there on the streets, but this way the supports come to you. So that's one kind of housing. But another is housing that's what we call affordable housing, which means housing with subsidies of some kind. Because maybe I can be independent, but I only make $15 an hour, that's minimum wage. Or I only make $20 an hour, which is barely enough to get a 1-bedroom, but I have 2 kids, so I need a 2-bedroom, right? So affordable housing is housing that in some way is subsidized. There's a lot of different ways that happens, so that somebody who is low income can afford it, right? Can afford to live in. Or maybe I'm on Social Security, I'm 70 years old, right? And all I have is my Social Security, and the way the rents are going, I can't afford them. So you might go into subsidized housing, right? So that's one thing. But there's also other models that Delaware has yet to really explore. There's a lot of states that are looking at vacant office buildings and vacant box stores, these huge spaces that are vacant and aren't coming back anytime soon. And so they're making them what they call SROs, single room occupancy, which means that you have a room, you have a lock and key to your room. It has your own bathroom and shower in it, but no kitchen and no common area. So you have, everybody shares the kitchen, everybody shares the common area, but I have my room, right? For a lot of low income folk, that would be what they need, right? That would be amazing. We don't have a lot of it in Delaware, but that would be really cool. There are some cities in Delaware where it is literally illegal to live in, to rent to somebody in your house who is not a relative. Literally, if I had an empty bedroom and I wanted some extra income, or my best friend needed a place to stay and I wanted to rent it to them, it might be illegal, depending where in Delaware I am, for me to let them live with me.
Wow.
Why? Right? You know, we did this program in Lewis about 1.5 years ago, and we had all of these people. I brought down the average age, and I ain't no youngin'. And they were all talking about, many of them were single, not by choice, widowed or widowers, in houses that were nice houses. And they're like, you know, I just want company in my house. Can't I rent out 2 or 3 rooms in my house and have company? I don't want to move, right? But some places it's illegal. Why is that? So there's a lot of different kinds of housing that can be really used differently and creatively to meet this need of low income folk, but we have to be willing to do it. And there's a lot of municipalities in Delaware that are not willing to do it. And that's just scary and sad.
Yeah, that's terrible, but that's a good idea, to be able to find a way to, find some housing for folks. Folks, it's getting winter time. It's getting cold out here, for, I don't want to look at the person's situation, whether it's their fault or not. We are human, for it and stuff, and we need to stay in a nice warm place at least, and get a decent night's sleep, and go from there. But if you have any ideas, as you see, Miss Sonia Starr at a housingalliancede.org, her email going across. If you have any ideas, we're open to them. We want to hear it. We want to start making some progress on this housing, and to make it seem pretty good. Whatever we might have, whatever might can happen in that area. If you see open land or something that we might can pass some legislative, as we can build something on it to where we can house these people. And we looking in all 3 counties, folks, for it. We know that it's not going to be the best situation for some of the people that live in certain areas and stuff for it, but we would work toward finding a healthy resolution to maintain it, keep it up, make sure it's it's whole for the people living there. Almost like the Hope Center. The Hope Center was a hotel, but it's a perfect situation for what people gotta live, and they got to go. But for if we see something like that, abandoned hotels, maybe we can kind of have them remodeled, find some funding and
Mhm.
stuff, and go from there. And Miss Sonia, we don't know if we know what the government shutdown and the grants and the fundings is going crazy. Would it even be any probably way that we can get funds if people found some places like that? You think?
It's hard to answer right now, right?
Hmm.
Our state, like every single state in the United States, depends highly on federal funding. So
Hmm.
there's two pieces to federal funding. One is the shutdown. That's definitely, causing crisis after crisis all across the country, and our state. But the other piece of it is called the appropriations bill. The only reason the shutdown happened, the appropriation bill is literally like the government's budget for the year, right?
Hmm.
So just like we all have a budget for the year in our checkbook, the
Hmm.
government has to have a budget for the year. And every year their budget year goes from October 1st to the end of September. And every year they're supposed to have a budget approved by October 1st, and that's called the appropriations bill. Well,
Hmm.
this year, what caused the shutdown is they didn't have the appropriation bill agreed on. And the reason they don't have it agreed on is because the president wanted to cut things like HUD by 50%,
Wow.
wanted to 50%. Um, and all kinds of Medicare and Medicaid, all kinds of not Medicare, Medicaid, all kinds of benefits the president wanted to cut. And then the House of Representatives was slightly better than the president, but not a lot. And then the senators looks good because compared to the
Right.
president in the House. But so we need to put pressure on our federal delegates to
Hmm.
say that the federal government cannot advocate its responsibility to help the states out. We
Mm.
need the federal government to give funding. So to answer your question, we're in for tough times if the House of Representatives or the president's budget gets passed, because the states are going to lose a lot of federal funding. If the states lose a lot of federal funding, they have to make up that shortfall, right? And they don't have a magic wand to do that. I don't envy them right now on the state level, right?
Mhm.
They're going to be caught between a rock and a hard place. Right now, they're trying to figure out how to make up SNAP funding. I want them to have SNAP funding, but if you take state funding to pay for SNAP funding, where are you going to get money to build affordable housing or shelters, right?
Right.
What scares me more than anything is what's called scarcity politics. I'm terrified that those of us who work, food insecurity serves the same people as people experiencing homelessness, serves the same people as people experiencing mental health issues, the same people as people with substance abuse, the same people, right? They're all the same people, right? That need all of these services. If we start fighting each other for what little funding is left, we're just going to hurt the people we serve. And that
Mm.
scares me about the shutdown. The shutdown is causing us to have to compete for what little funding there is because there's just not enough.
Wow, wow, and that's that's where we're facing right now, folks. Every little penny counts, as they say, and this funding and this government shutdown has been a change for us. It's a huge change. We never seen it before. But we got to keep moving. We can't think of that it's not going to change. We got to think of how we're going to make it happen. How we're going to still be out here creative and making sure these people getting food and shelter and water and stuff like that. And we had another question here, Sonia, and it said, how do the causes and experience of homelessness differ in urban versus the rural areas?
That's
For
a
it.
great question. That's a really great question. I'll tell you one simple answer, but it's a complicated question. It's
Mhm.
it's an excellent question. In the city, you can't miss people experiencing homelessness. You want to
Mhm.
take the train in Wilmington, you want to go downtown on Lancaster, you want to, right? You can't avoid seeing someone on the street somewhere, right? It's there. Whether you choose to see it, notice it, pay attention, that's a choice, but it's there for you to see. Rural, rural homelessness, if you don't know where to look, you ain't gonna find it. I
Mhm.
was early on in my career here, I was taken on a tour of Sussex, Western Sussex, to
Mhm.
where people were experiencing homelessness. And there were streets with no names on them. Like,
Mm.
how are you supposed to find them? They were nowhere near public transportation, nowhere near stores or even other houses, right? They're
Mhm.
totally hidden. So it's harder to find people, first place, right?
Mhm.
In rural poverty. But there's other things that also contribute to the difficulty. You have to be hard pressed not to find a place that can sell food in the city. But you can you can live miles and miles and miles and miles away from any source of food in rural America, including in Sussex and parts of Kent. So if you can't even walk to get food, how are you supposed to eat it? Or buses. I mean, yes, the bus system in Wilmington might not be the best on the planet, but at least there is one. In parts of Western Sussex, there is no buses. So you can't, if you don't have a car, which is already an expense you can't afford, you can't get anywhere, right?
Mm.
And then we don't even think about Wi-Fi,
Mm.
right? How do people get jobs these days?
Mm.
I'm old enough that you used to walk into a store. When I was in high school going to get my first job, I printed out my resume, right?
Right.
15, 20 copies of it. And I walked into store after store and I handed them my resume, right? That's how you did it. You don't
Mhm.
walk into anywhere today. You have to have Wi Fi. You have
Mm.
to be able to get on the internet to get a job today. Well, I can tell you from being all kinds of Zoom meetings with people in Sussex, getting on Zoom is not always easy for
Right.
people who don't have reliable Wi-Fi, right?
Right.
At least in Wilmington, you could go to the library and use their Wi-Fi,
Mhm.
right? There's a place you can go right here. There's a whole lot of experiences in the city. I'm not saying there aren't other issues in the city as well, but if I had to pick, I'd rather be poor in the city than in the rural areas of America.
Wow. Wow. Yeah,
Not that
because
anybody's choosing, but
right. Right. Yeah, because rural area, I mean, it's a very hard situation for it. And at least in the city, you might can find some place to plug up a phone or something, or get something. But if you don't have no generator, nothing out there, and you're standing out there, you're trying to hitch a ride to get something to eat. It's a hard way to go for it and stuff, and go from there. So it's just sometimes it's amazing
Mhm.
for them to even survive in those types of
Mhm.
areas. And this is a question for you, Ms. Starr, is do we count homelessness in rural areas?
We do. So we have the point in time count. It's the last week of January. It's one night. I think they just picked it, but I don't know what it is yet. Um, and there we need lots of volunteers. We need lots and lots of volunteers to help us with the point in time count. Whatever the weather is that night, we go all over the state. We go into rural areas, we go into encampments, we go into shelters, we go into code purples, we go anywhere we know people experiencing homelessness are, and we interview them. We
Mhm.
ask them their name, we ask them where the last place they lived, we ask them, are they running from domestic violence? We ask them, do they have a disability? We ask them all kinds of information. And that's how we know, how we that's the best number that we have of how many people that night are experiencing homelessness. It's not a perfect number because of, remember how we were talking earlier about people who are hiding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't get them, but you can see from year to year if we're getting trending up or we're trending down. So you can see the trends of how many people are experiencing homelessness. As of last year, we're going in the wrong direction. We'll find out in January, are we still trending up or trending down or, staying even? But we need lots of volunteers to make that program happen. So again, email me and I can get you that information if you're interested.
Yeah, yeah, that is that's good because we want to in these rural areas, how do the people really survive out there, and are we really able to count and catch them because we don't know where they are. Um, the question with the government shutdown, has that affected the funding of programs that your organization offers or anything like that?
So that again is it's a great question and a complicated answer. 3
Mhm.
of our 4 departments depend on HUD funding.
Mm,
And remember, I told you the president's budget wanted to cut HUD funding in half. If that budget goes through, that would significantly impact us, whether it be this year or next year, right? Um, but the president also doesn't like the program that we have called Continuum of Care, which brings HUD funding into Delaware. Last year, close to 11 million, little more than $11 million we brought into Delaware for permanent supportive housing to help people who really need those wraparound services. So if the president gets his wishes and eliminates COCs, that will be a problem. That's in the courts right now. That's being fought in the courts. We're
mhm,
assuming because of the Senate budget that the COCs, we're hoping, won't be eliminated, but they might have funding drastically cut,
mhm.
which means then we can't fund as many shelters. We can't fund as many wraparound services to help people. Um, so yes, there are ways that not only the shutdown, but also the appropriation bill will affect things. Right now, the shutdown is not affecting our agency. It is affecting other agencies, but not ours.
Yeah, yeah, we know that with that shutdown, some funding's gonna take a hit. We just being optimistic that we'll come to a peaceful resolution to make sure that we can get back in a normal operating status, and folks can get back to work to support what we're doing out here in the communities, for it.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah.
One of the problems with the shutdown, which we don't think about, is that federal employees are not getting paid.
Mm,
So when you start to think about people who are homeless, or you're going to have to start thinking about, if we don't put them back to work, they're not going to be able to make their rent or their mortgage, right? And how many months of savings? Maybe they have a month of saving, maybe 2, but there's a whole lot of them. Not every federal employee makes a lot of money.
mhm,
Janitors are federal employees. Clerks, people, secretaries are federal employees. There's all kinds of federal employees that don't make a lot of money who now are going to run the risk of becoming homeless themselves because the federal government isn't paying their wages. How many of us could make it if we had to go 2 months without a paycheck?
wow. Yeah.
You know?
Yes. It's hard for that to happen. It's going to be very hard for, not unless you got a substantial amount of savings for it. And, they still have to work, but, they still got to perform their duties, because they have agencies out here that depend on them to reach out and still have that contact. So we have to keep in mind that, we just praying for all of our government employees that's out, that's not um, getting any type of funds that they can live on, that we can provide for it. It'd be nice if we knew of something that they were doing to help these folks, so we can donate or something. But it is totally amazing, and it can be overwhelming for it and stuff that they need help. Next question we have: what are the long-term effects on homelessness on a person's development, education, and overall life expectancy?
That's a great question. When I first started this job, I went to a conference and they did this exercise, and it's a good one to think about. They paired us up in pairs. So, two groups of two. One of
Mhm.
us was supposed to be an employer, and one of us was supposed to be the person looking for a job. It was supposed to be a job interview. And
Mm,
so we had to imagine what we would look like if we were homeless. We were coming into this job interview with our bags and our suitcases of stuff. And we probably smelled because we never taken a shower because we didn't have a shower, right? We didn't
mhm,
have a place to wash our clothes. We weren't able to look nice for the interview. What's the likelihood of us getting that job? But
mm,
more equally important, what's the likelihood of us to keep being able to go putting ourselves out there over and over and over again and keep getting hit
mhm,
down, right? There's a real toll to being out there on the streets. And I've said this many times. You probably heard me say it, Johnny, more than once.
mhm,
I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a
mhm,
substance abuser. But you put me on the streets for about 3 or 4 nights, I'm
mhm.
going to be coping, right?
Right,
That doesn't help me get off the streets, but it
right,
gets me through the streets, right? It gets me through the night. So there's a huge toll. Many of the people who are substance abusers now on the streets became substance abusers after they were on the streets,
wow,
not before. Right now, there are people that their substance abuse caused them to be homeless. I'm not saying no, but a significant amount of them became homeless, became substance abusers afterwards because they needed to cope. Well, now you not only have the trauma of being on the streets, you now have a substance abuse issue, right? You have so many things working against you that it is a miracle to me that there are people who can say, I was homeless and now I'm not. Because I don't know if I could have transcended all that goes into being out there on the streets and make it to the other side. And yet people do. And we know they do with the proper help and support.
right, for it and stuff. And have we noticed that um, their development of eagerness to go out there to get jobs or increase their education, and is their life even shortened by being out here homelessness?
Nationally, the average is 12 years are taken off your life by living on the streets.
Wow.
12 years. 12 years. That's not just a year or two, like 12 years. And think about it, right? I had surgery last year. I'm lucky I have health insurance, right? So I
Mhm,
had surgery. I paid my co-payment, but nothing like it would have cost if I didn't have it. But I needed to be somewhere to rehab for 6 weeks. I couldn't work for 6 weeks. I was also lucky I have sick leave for 6 weeks, right?
mhm,
But I needed to have a place where it was safe for me to have physical therapy, where there was somebody else who could lift heavy things for me, where the I could get a ride to the store or the doctor to get my prescriptions filled, to get my appointment because I wasn't allowed to drive for a while, right? If you had to go straight from that kind of surgery to the streets, think
mhm.
about it. How do you do any of that? Right?
Right, right.
How do you get to physical therapy? How do you get to the store when you can't even walk to get your meds? How do you stay on your meds?
Mhm,
Right? How do you do wound care is a huge issue. How do you keep something from becoming infected if you're living on the streets?
mhm.
Right? How do you clean it? How do you wash it? How do you disinfect it? Um, it is a really difficult thing to maintain yourself while you're living on the streets. There, I don't, I do not believe most, I'd say 95% of the people experiencing homelessness woke up one morning and said, hey, I'm going to live on the streets,
Right, right.
right? You don't wake up and say that. You don't wake up to do that. You got to be in some serious straits to find yourself in that position. And like I said, I'm in awe of people who make it to the other side, because I don't know if I could.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a hard situation. And somebody asked the question, what roles does education play in preventing youth homelessness?
So first place, 25% of all the people in Delaware who are homeless are under the age of 18.
Wow.
25% are under the age of 18. So nothing prevented them from, I mean, they can't even get, right? They can't even get a real education if you're homeless. And they didn't do anything wrong. They're kids. And that they're out on the streets, or they're in a car, or they're, surfing from bed to bed. I don't know how they learn. How are they supposed to learn if they don't know where they're sleeping that night? They don't know if they're going to have Wi-Fi. They don't know if they're going to have a quiet room to do their homework. They don't even know if they know how to get from school to the home they're going to sleep in. How are they supposed to do school? Having said that, school can help with better jobs, and better jobs means higher income, and higher incomes can mean preventing homelessness. There's no question about it. But right now, the crisis is so large that that's not the cure. That might be down the road. That might be something down the road. But right now, if you want anybody to do school, if you want anybody to find a job, if you want anybody to get clean, they need a roof over their head. They need a dry place to sleep, and they need a safe door that they can trust.
And that is so true, because it affects them, for down the road. I was talking to someone about kids. Some of the kids don't even eat, so they take food from the school and take it home on weekends, so they can eat through the weekend, which is amazing. I would have never thought about it, that it's getting that serious out here for it. But it's amazing that we see this stuff happening over and
It's
over again.
scary.
Yes.
It's scary. It's sad. It's scary, and it doesn't reflect well on what kind of community we've become.
Yeah, for it and stuff. And folks, we out here, we still got to be a village, regardless what's going on. We still got to be a village, our young folks need to have it. And we got another question here, Kurt. How successful are the former abandoned commercial building sites, conversion sites? How successful are the
Right.
former abandoned commercial sites, for that?
So that's when I was talking about that's where we need to be more creative. We need to do a better job of allowing them to change their zoning. So you get zoned differently for commercial, and a lot of times in commercial areas, you can't have residential areas. But why not? If they're empty, they're abandoned, we should be converting them. You're absolutely right. And we need to make sure our zoning boards find them, convert them so that they can be rehabbed for housing. Absolutely.
And Ms. Starr, something that stands out to me as Curtis, one of our investors out here, that we have people that's able to find someone to do the work and do those jobs. I mean, and kind of provide that support. I think that would be good for our boards to be able to say, hey, Mr. Curtis, you're able to do this, to put the homeless up and stuff like that. Maybe we can compensate you for what you're doing, so we can be able to have this able to work, which would make sense, instead of always
If you own an empty building that you would be willing to donate or get at a reduced rate to be, bought by a nonprofit or the city at a reduced rate to convert it, use that email. Let me know. Not that I can promise anything, but I could definitely hook you up with people who know a lot more than I do.
Yeah, for it and stuff. And that's important, because we have folks that, have those skills and able to do that. but we don't utilize them appropriately, for them and for their services that they can help grow that and start to name some of these facilities after some of these folks that's out here making this change and it's different, which is a big thing. But folks, you see Miss Sonia Starr at housingalliancede.org. Send her an email. If you have some ideas, you have some suggestions coming up. We have 2 events coming up as we have the Fair Housing Justice Week coming up from November 18th to the 25th. Am I correct there? In Delaware. And then we have another event coming up in December. Could you tell us a little bit about that again before we leave?
Sure. That's the Homeless Persons Memorial Service. That's December 21st in Wilmington at 5 p.m. at Sam's. And it is outside, no matter what the weather. And it is a time for us to remember the people who have died on the streets on this longest night of the year.
Yeah. So December 21st is that for. So folks, if you can mark your calendars, be able to participate, in December, show your love, show your respect for those that tried to fight that good fight. They didn't make it, they lived a life to the best they can. And, they transition, but we're excited that we have these opportunities. And Ms. Sonia Starr, we thank you for, the programs that y'all putting out here that folks can come out and kind of see what real life is. And folks, I always tell people, bring your children out so they can see and they can be understanding how grateful they can be for what's happening out here, because it's some kids that will love the little things that they hate or don't like out here that they have, for the holidays, for Christmas and everything. But we're going to keep it moving, and we're going to think that we're going to make a change here. We're going to promoting this. We're going to keep talking about it. It's not the last time you see Miss Starr. When stuff come up, we're going to start getting it so we can start really pushing and talking about it, because it's a good thing when we have numbers. When we have numbers, we have some things that can change. We have things that can be effective, and we can go from state to state, city to city, and promote this stuff so folks can understand that, hey, we're going to make a difference out here. We're going to change this homeless population. We're going to make it to where people can have decent places to live. We can't look at their past. We're going to look at their future and go from there. But Ms. Starr, do you have any closing remarks for us or before we leave?
I want to thank you, Johnny, as always, for having me on your show and bringing the issues to light and bringing it real. My only closing remark is I need all the help I can to transform Delaware to the state we want to be. So please reach out and let me know that you're interested in helping. Happy to have a conversation. Happy to learn what you can do and where we can maximize your support.
That's awesome, folks. Another great week, another great show. We're just here supporting the homeless. We thank Ms. Starr and her Housing Alliance of Delaware for all they're doing out here, to get our homeless population lowered, even though we know it's a struggle right now. But keep doing, send those emails out, provide some understanding, some resolution. If you have anything that you can provide assistance with or give some solutions to, please drop Ms. Sonia Starr an email and we can make it happen and get it done. Folks, this Creative Financing with JB, another week, another outstanding resource we have, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great evening.